Imagine this for a second. You're someone who digs up the truth. You find something vital, maybe a huge data leak affecting millions, and you do what seems right, you expose it. But instead of, a thank you or recognition, you end up being accused of the very thing you revealed. It sounds like fiction, but it's actually a really disturbing trend happening right now. It's at this messy intersection of cybersecurity, law, and, well, freedom of speech. Today, we're doing a deep dive into one specific, very worrying case. It involves Hiram Alejandro Camarillo, who's a well-regarded cybersecurity researcher. He's currently facing pretty serious accusations from Argentina, and there's also an investigation by the Michoacan government right here in Mexico. And the reason, it really looks like it's just because he reported on data leaks. So our mission today is to try and unpack why this is happening. What are the flaws in the system that let this occur? And crucially, what does it all mean for digital transparency and for your access to information? Because this stuff really does touch everyone online.
Yeah, it's critical we understand this. And what's fascinating here, or maybe deeply concerning, is this fundamental misunderstanding, sometimes even at high levels. It's about the difference between reporting a crime and actually committing it. This isn't just about one person's difficult situation. It really goes to the heart of how vital information flows, how digital rights are protected or aren't, and how we even define and prosecute cybercrime. The ripple effects are huge.
Okay, let's dig into Hiram's situation a bit more. Argentina is accusing him of, well, they're calling it a fake hack, which sounds bizarre on its face. And then, closer to home, the Michoacan government's got its own investigation going. Our source, who's really in the thick of this world, calls it delicate and quite serious. It feels like a definite escalation against researchers, people who are just trying to make the internet safer, right? It's like blaming the person who spots a fire for arson.
That's a perfect analogy, actually,
Yeah.
because the absolute core issue here is that cybersecurity researchers, people like Hiram, like our source, they report on leaks and attacks. They don't cause them. Think of them as digital watchdogs. They uncover what's already happened. Leaks from groups like the Mexican hackers mafia or big things like that Coppel ransomware attack everyone heard about. They just find and confirm these breaches, whether it's government bodies in Mexico City, Colima, Michoacan, or even internationally, US, Canada, Australia, Spain. They're basically an early warning system, often a thankless one, for institutions everywhere.
But here's what really makes you stop and think, and honestly, it's a bit baffling. It's the lack of basic expertise inside some of the federal agencies themselves. Our source pointed out that these agencies often just do not have forensic computer experts, which means essentially they're falling into fallacies and egregious errors. They mistake reporting for hacking. How can you possibly fight cybercrime effectively if your own investigators don't fully grasp how it works or how to even investigate it properly? It's a huge blind spot.
Right. And if you want a really concrete example of how this plays out, look at that Coppel ransomware incident. When Coppel got hit, it was pretty clearly ransomware. But what did the companies say publicly?
They denied it, right?
Totally denied it, called it an administrative problem.
Why would they do that?
Well, mainly to dodge legal responsibility, and almost certainly to avoid huge insurance claims that would kick in if they admitted it was a major breach. And this fits a wider pattern we see all the time. Entities trying to hush up breaches instead of fixing the underlying security holes. It becomes about controlling the story, controlling the narrative, not about transparency or accountability.
And that makes it even harder for the ethical researchers.
Exactly, because then the authorities, lacking their own expertise, might find it easier to go after the messenger, the researcher, instead of the actual criminals or, the negligent company.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about the media's role in this, because that can really muddy the waters, can't it, with misinformation. Our source mentioned a specific journalist, Ignacio Gomez Villaseñor from Publimetro. Apparently, our source has blocked him. And this journalist supposedly accused our source speaker of hacking other journalists. Our source was very clear, basically saying, I don't hack journalists. I couldn't care less about journalists. It's a pretty strong denial.
And this brings up a really problematic area of the relationships some media outlets might have with actual cybercriminals. Our source even suspects this journalist, Villaseñor, might be involved with the Mexican hackers mafia. Now, if that's true, it suggests maybe people like him are trying to cover up their own connections.
By blaming researchers.
Precisely, and deflecting blame onto legitimate researchers. It's a classic blame the messenger tactic, and it shifts focus away from the real crime. It really distorts public understanding.
Which leads to this really important warning our source gave about how journalists sometimes interact with cybercriminals, treating them like confidential sources. The advice was clear. Keep your distance. Treat them from afar. Don't get drawn into direct conversations in Telegram. Definitely don't accept files.
Yeah, that's critical.
Because, as the source put it, they are cybercriminals who can do things to you. It's not just ethics. It's personal safety, journalistic integrity. You could end up being a pawn or even a victim.
You know, what's insightful there is how certain kinds of news, the source called it red light news, maybe sensationalist news, often ends up, maybe unintentionally, elevating the cybercriminal, the cracker. They get portrayed as these shadowy geniuses instead of, well, criminals.
Right, it gives them a platform.
Exactly. Gives malicious actors a platform, creates this warped public image, and it really makes you question the media's responsibility. Is chasing clicks more important than responsibly informing the public about real threats and the people trying to stop them?
So, connecting all this to freedom of expression, especially here in Mexico, there's this new system, right? The notification and removal system the Supreme Court approved. It sounds like it allows content to be taken down super fast. Our source called it extreme and serious. Why? Because it makes social media platforms act like
judge and jury, instantly, without any real due process.
Okay. And the impact on free speech.
Oh, it's potentially massive.
Yeah.
And worrying. This kind of system can easily be misused to censor criticism, social commentary, even just memes. Imagine someone makes a meme about a politician. It could get zapped almost immediately, and the user's account might get suspended, maybe for 24 hours.
Just for a meme.
Yeah. It's a direct threat to free speech online, effectively stifling that spontaneous public conversation and critique that happens on social media. It shows how laws, even if well-intentioned, can be twisted to silence people.
And our source actually had a personal run-in with this. It sounds kind of absurd. They notified authorities about a leak from La Mañanera. That's the president's daily press conference. And as proof, they posted someone's INE, their ID number. Now, they admitted it was maybe disrespectful, but it was solid proof.
Okay, and what happened?
24 hours in what they called jail on X. Account suspended.
Wow.
But here's the kicker, the double standard. That kind of post gets taken down almost instantly, but actual malicious links, phishing sites, accounts used by real cybercriminals.
Much slower to get removed, I bet.
That's what the source said. Much, much slower. The system's priorities seem completely backwards. It's better at silencing whistleblowers than stopping actual crime.
And this ties into another trend that's just growing and growing. Governments everywhere demanding user data from platforms like X. IP addresses, locations, what users are doing. Our source made a really strong point. This is much, much more serious than doxing a person.
Because it's state-level surveillance.
Exactly. It's state-sanctioned access to private digital lives on a huge scale. That's a massive privacy concern for absolutely everyone, not just researchers. It expands state surveillance right into our private digital spaces.
Let's talk about some of the legal traps, the sort of absurdities that researchers can fall into. There's this issue of possession of content. The example given was investigating child pornography sites.
Right, a really sensitive and difficult area.
Even if your only goal is to take these sites down to help victims, if you're not official law enforcement working under very specific rules, you could be prosecuted just for the content that might auto-download onto your system during the investigation.
Yeah, it highlights these many fallacies and serious legal loopholes. Laws written without understanding the technical realities can turn ethical researchers into criminals by accident.
And that brings us back to a point you made earlier.
The lack of proper forensic work.
Yeah. The source stressed the lack of proper forensic expert reports, issues with chain of custody for digital evidence, just a lack of due process in some official investigations.
And that directly hits cases like Hiram's. Without those basic safeguards, accusations can fly without solid proof. If you skip steps like ensuring evidence integrity or tracking exactly how it was handled, the whole legal process is flawed. It's vulnerable to mistakes, misinterpretations, maybe even manipulation. This is why understanding these gaps is so vital. Knowledge really is power here, especially when advocating for fairer systems.
So what's the overall impact on the cybersecurity research community? You mentioned a chilling effect earlier.
It's profound. Researchers are genuinely facing police persecution, harassment, the constant stress of maybe facing legal action just for doing their jobs. Our source even half-joked, or maybe not joked, about researchers considering disappearing into a bunker if the legal threats pile up too high.
That's serious. It stops people from reporting problems.
Absolutely. It directly threatens responsible disclosure, the very research that helps protect all of us online. If researchers are too scared to report vulnerabilities, those holes stay open, leaving everyone exposed.
And this creates a situation where, as the source put it, the researchers become scapegoats.
Yeah, the scapegoat phenomenon.
Yeah.
The source said the real cyber criminals are laughing because they've managed to shift the dead body to Hiram.
So the actual criminals get away with it?
Often, yes. It's a complete miscarriage of justice. The real perpetrators carry on, maybe even emboldened, while the authorities chase the wrong person. It sends a terrible message. Do the right thing, and you might become the target.
And digging deeper, there's this really troubling potential for, well, institutional corruption, or at least deliberate misdirection. Could some institutions be using these vague laws not to fight crime, but maybe to silence people who said they were hacked?
It's a disturbing thought, but plausible. Instead of owning up to their security failures or going after the real attackers, they might find it easier to accuse and maybe even imprison the truth-tellers who expose them.
A total inversion of justice.
It's a profound betrayal of public trust, if that's happening.
Stepping back, what does this mean for cybersecurity overall?
Our source called it a retroceso, a regression, a step backwards. It feels like going back in time, maybe decades, to when reporting a software bug could get you threatened with jail instead of tanked.
We thought we'd move past that.
Largely, yes. There's been a big shift towards collaboration, bug bounties, responsible disclosure. But these recent events, they threaten to drag us back to a darker, less secure time for digital safety. It's bad for everyone online.
Okay, is there any good news in all of this? Any pushback?
Well, there are some positive signs. Our source mentioned X, formerly Twitter. Apparently, X dismissed Argentina's request for Hiram's user data.
Oh, really? That's significant.
Yeah, our source saw that as a very good sign. It shows that some big platforms are willing to push back against government demands sometimes to protect user rights. That sets an important precedent.
And what about activist groups? Are they involved?
Definitely. That's another bright spot. Digital rights organizations are really stepping up. Our source mentioned our third here in Mexico, but also similar groups in Uruguay and Argentina. Apparently, some are coordinating, even suing the Argentinian government over these kinds of issues. They're monitoring these problematic cybercrime laws, like how Uruguay implemented the Gibraltar Treaty on International Cooperation, and they're actively advocating for ethical hackers and digital rights. They're really on the front lines.
There was also a specific case mentioned, Alberto from Uruguay.
Right. His story is now being used as a kind of reference case. His own legal nightmare is showing other organizations and hopefully governments the disasters that can happen when cybercrime laws are badly written, especially when they don't distinguish between ethical security research and actual crime.
So his bad experience might lead to positive change.
Potentially. The source mentioned he might even get to speak in Uruguay's parliament, turning personal hardship into a catalyst for better laws. That's powerful.
And within the cybersecurity community itself, is Hiram getting support?
Oh, absolutely. The community is rallying. Our source and many others are actively supporting Hiram. Things like writing official letters, offering legal advice, raising awareness. It shows he's definitely not alone. This kind of solidarity is vital when individuals face state pressure. And despite the risks, the commitment is there. People will keep posting about leaks. They'll keep recommending Hiram's work. They'll form groups to take down scam sites, track the real criminals. The work continues. Because, as we said, this knowledge needs to be applied for everyone's benefit.
You know, this whole situation, the pressure on truth-tellers, it really brings to mind another major case, Julian Assange and WikiLeaks.
The strong parallel.
Our source brought it up, too. Assange's incredibly long fight, his imprisonment and then his eventual release. It does show that, in a way, the movement worked. The push for freedom of expression, the public's right to know, it had an impact.
But the cost?
Exactly. The immense personal cost to him, years lost, the health impact. It shows that while the principle might eventually win out, it's a brutal path. We need better protections so people don't have to endure that just for revealing important truths.
And that really underscores the commitment you see in the cybersecurity community. Despite facing risks like Hiram's, or seeing what happened to Assange, they keep going. They'll continue to identify weaknesses, report leaks, and try to track down the actual bad actors. It's more than just a job. It's a belief in digital transparency and accountability.
So wrapping this up, we've really dug into this critical tension, haven't we? You have these independent cybersecurity researchers playing a vital role exposing breaches. And then you have the legal system, governmental agencies, sometimes misunderstanding, sometimes maybe even deliberately suppressing that information and challenging the researchers themselves.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really interesting, like you said at the start. This isn't just some niche tech issue. It's fundamentally about the flow of information that impacts every single one of us, our safety, our privacy, our rights.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the knowledge we gain from understanding these situations, like in this deep dive, it's most valuable when we actually grasp it and apply it. The work these researchers do, uncovering and reporting vulnerabilities, it's essential. It's essential for our collective digital security, for holding powerful institutions accountable, and for building a genuinely transparent digital world. Without them, honestly, we're just navigating a very complex and risky online environment completely in the dark.
So a final thought for you, the listener. In this world where data leaks are increasingly common, where the lines between reporting a problem and being blamed for it seem to be blurring, how do you critically evaluate the information you get? And maybe more importantly, what's our collective responsibility here? How do we support those who bring uncomfortable truths to light? And how do we demand legal systems that are fair, transparent, and actually target real cybercrime effectively? It's not just about hackers and researchers, it's about the future of truth itself in our digital age. Definitely something worth mulling over.